Ethan had always dreamed of exploring new worlds. It was the reason he joined the space program in the first place. He never imagined his first solo mission would take him to a planet so different from Earth. A planet with no men. He didn't know exactly what to expect, but he had to go. The planet was rich in resources and located in an unexplored part of the galaxy. It was a great opportunity for both science and humanity, and Ethan couldn't wait to get started. The planet was called Valara. It was a beautiful world full of towering trees and strange creatures. The skies were a soft blue, and the landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen. As his spaceship landed on the planet's surface, Ethan felt a sense of excitement mixed with nervousness. Stepped out, his boots crunching on the soft, mossy ground. The air was fresh, and the temperature was perfect. It seemed like the perfect place for an adventure. He took a deep breath and activated his communicator to speak with his AI assistant named Stella. Stella was always there for him, helping with everything from navigation to keeping track of his research. "Stella, I've arrived," Ethan said into his wrist communicator. "Beginning exploration now." "Understood, Ethan. I'll keep track of your vitals and the mission parameters," Stella replied, her voice calm and reassuring. Ethan walked further into the forest, his boots making soft sounds on the ground. As he moved deeper into the trees, he saw strange, colorful flowers and heard the sound of animals in the distance. The air smelled sweet, like fresh flowers mixed with something earthy. The planet seemed peaceful, but something was different, he thought. There were no signs of human life, but that was to be expected. After all, he was the first to explore this planet. Hours passed, and Ethan didn't find much of interest in terms of technology or signs of civilization. But then, as he walked along a narrow path between two massive trees, he saw them, a group of alien women. At first he wasn't sure if they were friendly or not. They were tall, with skin that shimmered in the sunlight, and their eyes were a bright, glowing yellow. They were dressed in flowing robes, made of materials he didn't recognize. They didn't speak at first, just watched him with curious eyes. Ethan stood still for a moment, unsure of what to do. He wasn't sure if they spoke his language or if they even understood who he was. He had studied the planet's ecosystem, but didn't know much about its inhabitants. He cleared his throat and said, "Hello, my name is Ethan. I'm a human from Earth." The women seemed to exchange looks, and then one of them stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, with long, silver hair that caught the sunlight. Her voice was soft but clear as she spoke, though her accent was strange. "You are human?" she asked, her eyes full of wonder. Ethan nodded. "Yes, I am. I come from Earth. I'm here to explore, learn about your planet." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him closely. It was clear they had never seen a human before. Their society had no men, so they probably didn't know much about humans beyond their scientific studies. "You are different," she said. "Why are you here? You are alone." Ethan nodded again. "Yes, I am alone. I was sent to explore, to understand your world and its resources." The woman's gaze softened.
"You are ... welcome. We have been waiting."
"For someone like you?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Someone like me?" The woman smiled, though it was a strange, almost uncertain smile. "A man. You are the first to arrive here. We have no men, only women. Our planet has been without men for a long time." Ethan felt a bit awkward, standing there in front of these women, all staring at him with interest. They seemed kind, but there was something in their eyes that made him uneasy. Wasn't sure what it was, but it was as if they saw him as something other than just an explorer. After a brief silence, the woman spoke again. "You will come with us. There is much to see. You must meet our people." Ethan wasn't sure what to make of her words, but he didn't want to offend them. They were the first inhabitants he had encountered, and he didn't want to risk their hostility. So, he followed them through the forest. The group led him to a large clearing where other women were gathered. They were sitting in groups, talking and laughing. They all stopped when they saw him, and for a moment there was complete silence. Women stood up, their eyes wide with curiosity. It was clear they had never seen a man before, and Ethan felt their stares as they examined him. Some of them whispered to each other in a language he didn't understand. Others simply watched, intrigued by his presence. "Who is he?" one of the women asked, her voice full of wonder. "He is human," the first woman replied. "He is different from us, but he is our guest." Ethan felt more and more out of place. These women weren't just curious about him, they were fascinated. It was as if he was something rare, something to be studied and admired. But what bothered him the most was that they didn't seem to treat him like a person. He was more like an object, something to be explored and understood. For the rest of the day, the women didn't leave him alone. They asked him questions about Earth, his life, and his mission. Ethan tried his best to explain, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were treating him like an oddity, something to be displayed rather than a person with his own thoughts and feelings. By the time evening came, Ethan was tired. He had learned a lot about the planet's ecosystem, but he couldn't help but feel unsettled by the attention. He was treated like a rare specimen, and the way the women watched it made him feel as though they expected something from him. He didn't know what it was, but he had a feeling that this planet was going to be more challenging than he had anticipated. That night, as he lay in his tent, he thought about the women. They had been kind, but something was off. They seemed to view him not just as a visitor, but as something to be owned, something that could be theirs. It was an unsettling thought. Ethan wasn't sure what the future held on this strange planet, but one thing was clear: things were about to get much more complicated. Ethan woke up the next morning feeling more confused than ever. The strange feeling of being watched lingered as he unzipped his tent. The sun had just risen, casting a soft orange glow over the alien forest. The air was cool, and the sounds of distant wildlife echoed through the trees. It was peaceful, yet there was an unsettling quietness around him. As he stepped out, he saw the alien women waiting for him. The group that had met him yesterday was there again. They were standing in a line, all dressed in their flowing robes, their eyes fixed on him. The tall woman with silver hair, the one who had spoken to him first, stepped forward. "Good morning, Ethan," she said with a warm smile. "We are glad you are here. We have much to show you." Ethan nodded, still unsure of what exactly he was walking into. The women didn't seem threatening, but their behavior made him feel like he was a guest at a strange, unspoken ritual. It was as if they were waiting for him to take the next step, to play along in their unfamiliar world. "Where are we going today?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We will show you our city," the woman said. "It is not like your cities, but it is our home. You will see how we live." The word city caught Ethan's attention. He was excited to learn more about their society, but he also felt a rising concern. He hadn't seen any signs of technology during his journey, and he wasn't sure what to expect. Were these women technologically advanced, or were they still living in a primitive state? He followed them through the forest, the group walking in harmony. The trees became less dense as they approached what looked like a settlement. Ethan couldn't help but feel awestruck. The buildings were unlike anything he had ever seen. Were tall, made of smooth stone and glass that shimmered in the sunlight and seemed to grow out of the land itself. The architecture was organic. As though the buildings were part of the very nature around them, the women led him deeper into the settlement, where more groups of women were gathered. There were children playing in open spaces, some of them using strange devices that Ethan couldn't recognize. Others were working with plants and animals, their movements precise and graceful. "This is our home," the silver-haired woman said as she led him to a central square. "Here, we live, work, and learn. We do not need men to survive." Ethan didn't know what to say. He'd always believed that men and women worked together, each bringing their own strengths to society. But here, on Valara, that idea seemed completely foreign. The idea of an entire planet without men was mind-boggling. "How do you manage?" Ethan asked, trying to understand their way of life. "I mean, don't you need men for, well, some things?" The woman smiled softly. "We have lived like this for centuries. We have no need for men. We are enough. Our society is built on unity and strength, and we have flourished without them." Ethan didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure if he should press further. But the question gnawed at him. How could an entire society function without men? And yet, as he looked around, it was clear that these women were strong, intelligent, capable of creating a thriving civilization. But there was something else in their eyes, something that bothered him. As he walked through the square, he noticed the women's eyes following him. They didn't just glance at him, they watched him closely, as if studying him. It was as if his every move was being analyzed, evaluated. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being judged, or worse, that he was the center of attention in a way that made him uncomfortable. The silver-haired woman led him to a large gathering area where more women were waiting. They all turned their heads as Ethan entered, their expressions curious and expectant. The feeling of being on display grew stronger with each passing moment. Ethan. The silver-haired woman began, her voice calm but firm. These are our leaders. They wish to meet you. The women in the gathering area were dressed differently from the others. Their robes were more elaborate, and their posture was confident and commanding. They didn't seem intimidated by Ethan at all. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for him to prove his worth, or perhaps show them what they expected. Ethan's heart raced. He tried to remain composed as he greeted the leaders. They nodded in acknowledgement, but their eyes never left him. It was like he was an exhibit at a museum. They were there to observe. "Tell us about your planet, Ethan," one of the leaders said. "We are curious about your world. We've never met anyone like you." Ethan did his best to answer their questions. He spoke about Earth, the people, the history, the challenges. He explained the way humans lived, worked, and interacted. But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that his words didn't matter as much as his presence. They weren't interested in the details of Earth's history. They wanted to know about him, the human man. As the meeting continued, Ethan began to realize something unsettling. The women weren't just interested in his knowledge or his story. They were fascinated by him as a person. But more than that, it seemed they viewed him as something rare, something they could possess. "Do you have a mate? Another leader?" asked. Ethan blinked, surprised by the question. "No," he replied. "I'm not here to. I don't have a mate." The leader smiled, and there was a flicker of something in her eyes. "You will find one here. You are special. Are the only man we have seen in many years." Ethan's stomach twisted. He didn't know what to make of her words. It wasn't just curiosity they were showing, it was something deeper. The way they looked at him made him feel like he was no longer in control. The silver-haired woman approached him and placed a hand gently on his arm. "You are our guest, Ethan," she said softly. "But here we care for what is ours. You will stay with us." Ethan was taken aback. The idea of staying here, being cared for by them, felt wrong. He wasn't sure how to express his discomfort, but the more time he spent with these women, the more it became clear that his presence on Valara was not just about exploration. It was about something else, something he didn't fully understand. As they escorted him to a nearby building, Ethan's mind raced. He had come to explore, to learn about this unique world. But now, it felt like the roles were reversed. He was the one being studied, the one who was being claimed. And he wasn't sure how to. Ethan couldn't help but feel a growing unease as the days passed on Valara. The women were kind, but something about their attention began to feel more suffocating. He had come to explore, to learn about a new world, but instead, he felt like an exhibit, something to be observed, studied, and admired. Everywhere he went, the eyes of the women followed him. He could feel their gazes on him, even when he tried to look away. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It felt more like something deeper. They were fascinated by him, but it was as if they viewed him as a rare object, something they could claim as their own. The silver-haired woman, who had been so welcoming when he first arrived, had become particularly attached. Her name was Lacera, and she was the one who seemed to guide him everywhere. Ethan had tried to speak to her about his discomfort, but every time he mentioned that he was a guest, that he wasn't here to stay, she simply smiled and said, "You belong here now." The more he tried to assert his own identity, the more the women seemed to see him as a part of their world. He never understood that he was an individual, someone who had his own life, his own responsibilities back on Earth. To them, he was a guest, yes, but a guest who was meant to stay forever. And not just stay as a visitor, stay as something more. One afternoon, Lasara took him to a large open space in the center of the settlement. It was filled with other women, all gathered around, speaking in low voices. Ethan felt a sense of growing discomfort. He had no idea why they were all watching him. Lasara, noticing his hesitation, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, Ethan, they are just curious. They wish to know more about you." Ethan tried to keep his voice steady. "I've told you everything I can. I'm here to explore, not to stay." "But you are staying," Lasara said softly, her eyes fixed on him. "You're the first man we've seen in many generations. You are special to us, and we will take care of you." Before Ethan could protest, the women gathered around him, each one speaking with excitement and curiosity, known as they asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about his life. But no matter how many questions they asked, it was clear they weren't interested in learning about his world. They were interested in him. It wasn't long before Ethan realized that the women didn't just want to learn from him. They wanted him. In their society, men didn't exist. They had no concept of relationships like he understood them, had no concept of independence between men and women. The idea that he could be his own person was foreign to them. To them, he was an opportunity for companionship, for affection, and perhaps most disturbingly, for control. As the days wore on, Ethan felt more and more trapped. Everywhere he went, he was followed. Everywhere he turned, there was another woman eager to speak with him, eager to be near him. At first, their curiosity was flattering, but soon it became overwhelming. One day, as he sat in a quiet corner of the settlement trying to collect his thoughts, Lasara approached him again. This time, her expression was softer, but there was something different in her eyes. "Ethan," she began, "I understand that this is difficult for you. You are from a different world, and you are not used to our ways. But here, you are special. You are the only one of your kind. The others will come to understand your importance in time." Ethan stood up, feeling the weight of her words. "Lasara, I didn't come here to be special. I came to learn about your planet, to explore it. But this isn't what I signed up for." Lasara smiled gently. "But you are here now, and you belong to us. Your presence is a gift, Ethan. We are grateful." The words echoed in his mind. "You belong to us." That was what bothered him the most. To them, he was no longer a person with his own free will. He was a part of their society, a prize to be cherished, yes, but a prize nonetheless. He didn't know how to escape this new reality. How could he make them understand that he wasn't a thing to be owned? That evening, as he lay in his tent, Ethan stared up at the stars. His communicator was silent. He hadn't been able to reach Earth in days. He felt isolated, cut off from everything he knew. How long would it take before the women became too controlling? Would they ever let him go? He had a mission to complete, a return to make, and he couldn't let himself be consumed by their expectations. The next day, Lasara invited him to a gathering in the central square. This was not unusual. The women often invited him to such events. But this time, there was a sense of urgency in her invitation. He could sense it in her voice. As they walked to the square, Lasara turned to him with a serious expression. "Ethan, there is something you must understand. Our world does not have men, but we have always dreamed of a connection with one. You are that connection. You are ... special." Ethan stopped walking, feeling his heart race. "Not what you think. I'm not here to stay. I need to go back. I need to finish my mission." Lasara's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his arm. "You are more than a mission. You are the key to something bigger, something better. You belong here now." Ethan stepped back, his heart pounding. "No, I don't. I'm not like you. I'm not here to be kept. I can't stay. I need to leave." Lasara looked at him for a long moment, and then a shadow crossed her face. "You will change your mind, Ethan. You will see. We are your family. Now." But Ethan knew what he had to do. Couldn't let himself be trapped in a world where he was treated like an object, something to be owned. He had to find a way. Ethan's mind raced as he walked through the settlement. His earlier conversation with Lysara had left him shaken. It was clear now that the women of Valara saw him as more than a guest. They weren't just interested in his knowledge about Earth or his mission, they were fascinated by him as a man, and that bothered him more than he cared to admit. Everywhere he went, they watched him. It was as if he couldn't escape their attention. The women were kind, yes, but they didn't seem to understand the concept of personal space. They surrounded him, asked questions, smiled at him, and seemed to expect something from him that he wasn't sure how to give. He had come to explore, to learn about a new world, not to become someone's possession. But it was beginning to feel like that was exactly what was happening. They didn't just admire him, they wanted him to fit into their society in a way that made him uncomfortable. The more he tried to maintain distance, the more they seemed to close in. One afternoon, after another awkward interaction with a group of women who asked him about his desires, Ethan found himself walking along the edge of the settlement. He needed space, needed to think. The air was cooler here, and the sound of the distant waterfall helped calm his nerves. But even here, couldn't escape their gaze. Lysara approached him again, her silver hair shining in the sunlight. She was always there, always nearby, watching him. Ethan knew she meant well, but her constant presence only made him feel more trapped. "Ethan," she said softly as she caught up to him, "we need to talk." Ethan turned to face her, his heart sinking. He could feel the pressure building in his chest. "What's going on, Lysara? You and the others? You're treating me like I'm something to be owned. I didn't come here for this." Lysara's face softened, but there was a hint of confusion in her eyes. "You don't understand, do you?
Yes.
You are special to us. You are the only man we have seen in many years. You are here, and we want to make sure you are happy. Care for you, Ethan." Ethan shook his head, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm not here to be cared for. I'm not here to stay. I came here to explore, to complete my mission. I need to go back. I can't just be kept here." Lysara stepped closer, her hand reaching out toward him. "You are part of us now. You belong here. You have no reason to leave." Her words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He had tried to explain himself, to make them understand that he wasn't here to stay, but they just didn't get it. To them, he was no longer an individual. He was part of their world, something they could keep, something they could take care of. "I'm not a pet, Lysara," he said, his voice shaking with frustration. "I'm a person. I have my own life, my own world to return to. You can't just decide for me." Lysara looked at him with a mixture of sadness and pity. "You will understand in time, Ethan. We don't mean to make you feel trapped. We just want what is best for you. We want you to stay." Ethan took a step back, feeling suffocated. The air around him suddenly felt thick and heavy. "No, Lysara," he said, his voice firm. "I need to leave. I'm not staying here. I came here for a mission, and I'm going to finish it." For a moment, Lysara didn't speak. She simply watched him, as if trying to read his mind. Then she took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "I see you are determined. But understand this, Ethan. You are important to us. You have made an impression here. We cannot just let you leave." Ethan's stomach twisted. He had known that the women were fascinated by him, but he hadn't expected them to take it this far. He had never felt so powerless in his life. How could he explain that he wasn't a part of their society, that he couldn't simply be treated as a curiosity, a rare object to be studied? As Lysara walked away, Ethan felt the weight of her words hanging in the air. The women on this planet didn't understand personal boundaries. They didn't understand the concept of free will. To them, he was just another part of their world, something to be protected and cared for. And that was the part that scared him the most. The next few days were no better. The women continued to shower him with attention, asking him about his home, his culture, his life. They all seemed to want a piece of him, as if his presence here was a treasure they couldn't let go of. They treated him like a rare artifact, something to be admired but never truly understood. Ethan had tried to distance himself, but the more he did, the more they seemed to close in. It was as if they couldn't comprehend the idea that he wasn't like them, that he didn't belong to their society. He felt more and more like an outsider, someone who didn't fit into their perfect world, yet someone they couldn't seem to let go of. One afternoon, as he wandered through the settlement, trying to clear his head, he was approached by a group of women. They were all smiling, their eyes shining with curiosity. "Ethan, we have a gift for you," one of them said. The others nodded eagerly, and one of them held out a small, intricately carved object. It looked like a necklace, with a glowing crystal at its center. Ethan took the necklace reluctantly, feeling the weight of their gaze on him. "What is this for?" he asked, trying to hide his discomfort. "It's a symbol of our appreciation," the woman said. "You are a part of our world now. You are special." Ethan's heart sank. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to leave. This wasn't what he had signed up for. This wasn't what he had expected when he stepped onto Valara. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was something else, something that didn't belong to himself anymore. As he walked away from the group, the necklace heavy in his hand, Ethan realized he had to find a way to escape before it was Ethan could feel the pressure building inside him. The days on Valara felt longer than they should. Every interaction with the alien women made him feel more and more trapped. They had no concept of personal space, no idea of what it meant to simply be left alone. They treated him like an object, a rare artifact that could be admired, but never understood. Despite his repeated attempts to express that he wasn't interested in staying, the women didn't listen. To them, it was clear he was theirs, and he wasn't going anywhere. They looked at him with adoration, spoke to him like he was part of their world, and it made Ethan feel more and more isolated. The longer he stayed, the harder it was to escape their grasp. It wasn't that they were cruel. They were kind, even generous in their own way. But there was a sense of entitlement, an unspoken assumption that because he was a man and they had never seen one before, he was somehow meant to belong to them. They believed he was their gift, their rare treasure, and they were determined to keep him. One afternoon, as Ethan walked through the settlement, he felt it again. The gaze of the women on him, the constant watching. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It felt like a possessiveness, an expectation that he would give himself to them. They didn't just want him to stay. They wanted him to accept that he was part of their society, part of their lives. Lysara, the woman who had been closest to him since his arrival, had become the most insistent. She spoke to him like a gentle friend, but her words always carried an undertone of ownership. "You are not like them, Ethan," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "You belong with us. You are special. We care for you." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, staring at the flames. "I didn't come here to be cared for. I came here to learn, to explore. I'm not a part of your world." Lysara reached out, placing her hand on his. "But you are a part of it now. You are the only man we have seen, the only one who can understand us, will stay with us, and you will see this is where you belong." Ethan pulled his hand away, his mind racing. He didn't want to offend her, but he couldn't stay. He didn't belong here, and he couldn't accept being treated like a prize to be kept. His life was on Earth, with real people who didn't see him as something to be owned or controlled. "I can't stay, Lysara," he said firmly. "I need to leave. I need to finish my mission. I can't be here anymore." Lysara's eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost sad. "Ethan, please. You are important to us. You don't understand yet, but you will. You'll see that you are meant to be here with us." Her words lingered in his mind as he walked away. He was determined to find a way to leave, but it wasn't going to be easy. The women had made it clear that they didn't want him to go. They believed that he was essential to their society, that his presence was somehow vital. But Ethan knew that if he didn't leave now, he might never have the chance again. That night, as he lay in his tent, staring up at the stars, he felt a sense of desperation creeping in. He had been patient, tried to explain his feelings, but the women didn't understand. They couldn't understand. They had no concept of what it meant to want to be alone, to have personal freedom. To them, relationships were about connection, not autonomy. He was just a piece of their puzzle, and they weren't willing to let him go. The next morning, Ethan knew what he had to do. He couldn't keep waiting for them to understand. He had to take control of his own life, even if it meant angering the entire settlement. He stood up early, gathered his belongings, and made his way to the ship. The ship was still functional, but he had no idea if he could leave without attracting the women's attention. Had become so focused on him, so insistent that he stay, that he knew they wouldn't let him go without a fight. As he reached the ship, he was stopped by a group of women. They had been waiting for him, watching his every move. Lysara was there too, her face a mixture of sadness and determination. "Where are you going, Ethan?" Lysara asked, her voice soft but firm. "You cannot leave. We need you." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He couldn't keep running from them. He had to stand up for himself. "I'm leaving," he said, his voice steady. "I can't stay here. I didn't come to be kept to be something you own. I came to explore. And now, it's time for me to go home." Lysara's face softened with understanding, but there was a hint of disappointment in her eyes. "See, you truly don't understand. We have never had a man like you here. You were meant to stay with us. You are part of us now." "Not part of your world?" Ethan said firmly. "I'm a person, not an object, and I can't live like this. I need to go." With that, he turned toward the ship. Lysara didn't stop him, but he could feel the weight of her gaze on his back. As he boarded the ship, he looked out at the women one last time. He saw them watching him, but he didn't feel guilty. Had made his decision. He had to go back to Earth to finish his mission and to live his life. The engines of the ship hummed to life as he prepared to leave Valara behind. He felt a mix of relief and sadness. It's relief because he was finally free, but sadness because he knew the women would never understand. They had treated him like a treasure, something to be owned, and they couldn't see him as anything more than that. As the ship lifted off the ground, Ethan looked out at the planet one last time. It was a beautiful world, but it was not his world. Now it was time. The stars outside the ship's window seemed clearer now that Ethan was on his way back to Earth. The silence of space surrounded him, stark contrast to the noise and confusion he had left behind on Valara. As he looked out into the dark void, he could still feel the weight of the women's gaze, their eyes following him even now. Even though he was light years away, the journey back to Earth had just begun. But already Ethan could sense the freedom he had been longing for. It was a strange feeling, relief mixed with sadness. He had been so eager to escape the suffocating attention of the Valoran women. But now that he was finally free, he couldn't shake the thought of them. Their faces, their voices, all still echoed in his mind. He sat back in his seat and closed his eyes, letting the hum of the ship's engines calm his thoughts. He had made the right decision, hadn't he? It had been the only choice, but there was still a part of him that felt guilty. The women of Valara had treated him with kindness, yes, but their understanding of relationships and personal freedom was so different from his own. They had seen him as a gift, a treasure, something to be owned. And as much as he had tried to explain, they had never understood that he wasn't something to be kept. He was a person with his own life and his own world. He remembered his conversations with Lysara. She had been the most insistent, the one who had treated him as a part of her society, someone who belonged with them. She had meant well, he knew that, but it had never been what he wanted. She had no concept of what it meant to want to return to his own world to finish his mission. For her, the idea that he would leave had been incomprehensible. She had seen him as something they could claim. That had been the hardest part. But now, as the ship glided through space, Ethan felt the weight of that pressure slowly lift. He was no longer a prize to be fought over. He was free to make his own choices, to live his own life. As the days passed, Ethan focused on the journey ahead. He spent time checking the ship's systems, ensuring that everything was working properly. He needed to get back to Earth, and he needed to do it quickly. The longer he stayed away, the more urgent the mission became. There were people on Earth, waiting for his return, waiting for his report on Valara, but despite the focus on his mission, his thoughts kept drifting back to Valara. He wondered how the women were coping without him. Would they forget about him? Would they ever understand why he had to leave? The idea that he might have left them with unanswered questions troubled him. But he knew it was the right thing to do. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. He had never felt so alone, and yet for the first time in what felt like weeks, he felt at peace. He wasn't surrounded by people who saw him as an object. He wasn't being watched every second of the day. He was free. But as he sat there, lost in his thoughts, a message suddenly appeared on his screen. It was from Stella, his AI assistant. "Ethan, we have received an incoming transmission from Valara," Stella said. "It's from Lysara. She is requesting to speak with you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Lysara. He hadn't expected to hear from her again. The thought of speaking to her made him uneasy. He had left without saying goodbye, without giving her any real explanation. Now she wanted to speak with him. What could she possibly have to say? He hesitated for a moment, but then decided he had to face this. He couldn't keep running from the past. He had made his decision. But that didn't mean he could ignore the people he had left behind. "Put it through, Stella," Ethan said, his voice steady. The screen flickered, and Lysara's face appeared. Her silver hair gleamed in her bright eyes were filled with a mixture of emotion. She looked both relieved and sad to see him. But there was a softness in her expression that made Ethan's heart ache. "Ethan," Lysara said softly, her voice as calm as always. "I didn't think I would hear from you again. I understand why you left. I just... I wanted to say that I'm sorry." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't expected an apology, not after everything that had happened. She was looking at him with sincere eyes, as if she truly understood. "I didn't want to hurt you," she continued. "I know now that I was wrong, I thought. I thought I could convince you to stay, that you would see how important you were to us. But I see now that I was wrong. You were right to leave. You belong to your own world, not ours." Ethan was quiet for a moment, unsure of what to say. He had tried to explain his feelings to her before, but hearing her words now, hearing her finally understand, made something inside him shift. He wasn't just escaping anymore, he was being understood. "Lysara, he began, but she interrupted him. "No," she said, her voice filled with sadness. "You don't have to say anything more. Just wanted you to know that we will always remember you. You showed us something we didn't understand before. We are different from you, but we are also learning." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He didn't want to hurt her, but he also knew that staying on Valara would have hurt him in ways he couldn't explain. He had made the right choice, even if it was a painful one. "Thank you, Lysara," he said softly. "I appreciate everything. You did, and I'm sorry too. I just... I need to go back. I need to finish what I started." Sara smiled, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. "I know. I hope one day you'll find peace, Ethan. I hope you'll find a place where you truly belong." The transmission ended, and Ethan sat in silence for a long time. He felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a sense of closure. He had left Valara to find freedom, but now he had something more. He had understanding, and that was worth more than he could ever have imagined. As the ship continued its journey home, Ethan felt the weight of the past begin to lift. He was going back to Earth, to the life he knew, but he would carry the lessons he had learned on Valara with him. The women of Valara might have seen him as a treasure, but in the end, he had learned that the most valuable thing was freedom to choose his own path and to be who he truly